engage. If you have questions, please put your hand up at any time. Periodically throughout this session, I'll be making pit stops and ask you guys for questions. Please feel free to use that. There's also going to be exercises that we'll be doing. So the more you put in, the more you participate, the more you get out of this session. It's going to be fun, hopefully. Okay, the agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about what is business writing and why you should care. 15 minutes. And then right after that, I just want to jump right into the meat and potatoes of this session, which is writing effectively through my own experience, as well as doing a lot of reading that I've done. I have actually broken down effective business writing into these 5 simple pillars. We'll kind of dive into that through a ton of examples as well. Right after that, I want us to kind of go through this group exercise. We'll split you into teams and put you in breakout rooms and have you do an exercise where you'll actually look at like an ineffectively written piece and fix it. And we'll do another exercise where you'll actually write from scratch. And we'll give you like a couple of scenarios through which you will actually think through and come up with writing. This again will be a group exercise. And finally, we'll do like a wrap up and leave time for more questions. But again, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to put your hand up and ask away. Cool. So what's business writing and why should you care? What is business writing? I just want to dispel some myths that a lot of people might have in their mind. So I often hear this term documentation, where people actually refer to, well, I'm working on the documentation for this. Like, it's kind of like documentation sounds like a rigid, stiff kind of thing. It doesn't change with time, that sort of stuff. Business writing is not necessarily just documentation. Business writing is presentations. This is another myth that some people have. It's definitely not. Presentations may be part of it, but not all. Engineering teams don't need to do business writing. Again, that's sort of a myth. It's especially given that almost everyone is sort of like working in some sort of a close relationship with engineering teams today. So it's really important for engineering teams to write well, write effectively, and this is a big one. So a lot of people actually think that written communication is just spoken word only written down. That again is extremely kind of like incorrect. Business writing is a very specific form of written communication, which is actually quite structured and very different. It's not just like everything that comes to my mind that I would normally say out loud. I just put it down in words. That's definitely not it. Business writing must only focus on business. It's stiff and it's formal. It's not fun. I mean, that again is sort of a myth. There is actually room for generating motivation, generating kind of like camaraderie as well within business communication. We'll actually see some of that later. So what is business writing then if it's not these? It's really any communication that happens in a business context. That is business writing. And business writing is focused on shared outcomes. The shared outcome might be sort of really dependent on what organization you're a part of and what team you're in, what you're trying to achieve, what is the context. But usually there is some sort of a shared outcome. Maybe it's immediate or maybe it's longer term, but there is really some sort of a shared outcome in the background. So that those are, in my view, the two sort of factors that kind of distinguish business writing from other forms of writing. So kind of going back to the stuff we looked at, like the different types of writing. All of these are business writing, right? So all of these and many more are part of business writing. So I want you guys to sort of keep this in mind and enter the rest of the presentation with this a frame of mind that business writing is really, you ping a colleague asking, when they're going to respond to something. That is business writing, right? You ping someone saying that you're running late to a meeting. That could also be viewed as business writing. So it doesn't just have to be product roadmaps or strategy memos. So let's enter our focus for today with that frame of mind. We're going to mostly focus on transactional business writing. So there are many types of business writing that achieve different outcomes. So things like research reports and things like that, like or a like a 10K document or things like that. Those are informational. Those don't drive any immediate action or a transaction. Today, we're going to focus most of our examples on transactional business writing, like emails, chats, updates, kind of like quick reports and things like that. Short and medium form content. Again, this is sort of like a handicap of how much time we actually have today. We only have like how long do I have, Manu?
Oh yeah, we've used half an hour, so yeah, you still have an hour.
Okay, cool. So with the hour that we have, I think we should just stick to short and medium form content. But we can kind of like I can take any questions on long form content in
Eh,
general. But the exercise.
Dimas,
Oh,
રાતના ટાઈમે ઓલી દવા લેતો હતો તું તમે
I
જે
think
પ્રિસ્ક્રાઇબ કરી છે.
someone has the microphone on. Can you please all mute the microphone for now, please? Yeah,
okay.
thanks.
So just for the time we have, we'll focus mostly on the short and medium form content, but definitely happy to take any examples. And the workshop that Manu was talking about, that's when we'll dive more into, first of all, deeper examples in all of these things, but also focus on report writing, product narratives, strategy memos, how to structure them, how to be really effective with those types of artifacts as well in the workshop. And we're going to focus on persuasive communication, where you're actually recommending us a series of action, a sequence of action, a specific business outcome, or you're convincing someone or a group of people to actually act in a certain way. So those are going to be the things we focus on today. Okay, cool. Why does writing matter in business? So we actually, we're in 2021. There's so many types of media that we can use. There's video clips. There's all kinds of like video shots. Excuse me, like TikTok, audio clips. There's Clubhouse. There's so many types of communication, and yet, why does writing still matter in the world of business? So I think we need to think of that more deeply. This you're going to see a graph, which is something that I put together based on my experience and my point of view. Um, I'd love to see if anyone has any comments on this. I actually tried to map out these two dimensions: the speed at which information can be consumed, and ability to create clarity across multiple people. So with those dimensions, I actually mapped out, because when Manu asked me to do this presentation, I was actually thinking, well, maybe how do I actually really how do I know that writing is still relevant today? And that's what led me to thinking about these two specific dimensions, and I actually mapped out all the different types of communication that we can use, and we probably already use like a multitude of different types of communication, and I kind of mapped them. So visuals, we often say stuff like a picture is worth 1,000 words and things like that. So I kind of like mapped that there. Video clips are becoming very popular now. A lot of product teams, including the team that I'm in at Microsoft, we actually use a lot of video clips to describe a product narrative. Um, live demos of like the entire product, again, that again is sort of like a really great way to drive a lot of clarity. Audio clips, PowerPoints. Yeah, again, this is highly infamous, right? Like PowerPoints are like really famous for actually adding a lot of non-clarity. Uh, but I think they have been really useful. They have been used a lot by especially people in finance industry. Spoken word. Spoken word, again, like you can kind of communicate really rapidly, but it's ephemeral. It evaporates really fast. So I think if you try to think of where written communication might actually fall within this chart, my hypothesis is that written artifacts actually fall in the top right corner, where the speed at which you can consume the information on a per minute or per second kind of basis, along with the ability to create clarity, is actually, both of these dimensions are actually quite high for written artifacts. That's, in my view, still the reason why even in 2021 written communication is a big deal, and that's really the reason you need to care. Not based on what different research studies actually indicate. So this particular graphic you looked at, I think this is what Manu had posted on the Meetup and the LinkedIn a few days ago. Um, it's actually this was based on the 2016 survey, State of Business Writing survey, that is actually linked here. We'll share some of these slides later on. Excuse me. Where 81% of the survey respondents actually, this was done in America. So this may actually be a little bit different if this were done in Europe. 81% actually said that poorly written material wastes a lot of my time. Um, and again, there's form factor based constraints. Like reading is hard on a device. It's hard to concentrate on a device because there's like so many notifications. We live in a world of noise with Slack messages and sort of things like that. Um, and when people are asked, how effective is the material you read or write? The rate from completely ineffective to 10 completely effective. Um, People actually stated something in the middle. So for material they read, they actually said that it's actually not that effective. For material they write, they're actually claiming that like they're actually so basically people are perceiving uh, themselves to be better at writing than their colleagues are, which is fine. But the important thing to note here is that um, it's actually quite bad. Like it seems like most people are quite frustrated. This is also gelling with the survey that some of you have responded to on the LinkedIn posts that I put up like an hour ago. Uh, I am not sure where it stands, but like the last time I checked, there were like 5 people that had responded, and I think all of them had actually marked as highly frustrating or um, mildly frustrating at least. So why is writing often ineffective then? Again, this survey points out to some clues on why this might be the case. It's just that our process for collecting and combining feedback doesn't seem to work because only 37% of the respondents actually said they agreed to the statement. And also, if you look at the graphic here on the right, it says that my teachers in school didn't prepare me for this. Like only 38% actually agreed that their schooling prepared them for writing at work, which I can totally relate to because the only thing I wrote in college and university were things like research reports and things like that, like stuff that's actually not based on a shared outcome or in a business setting. So that's sort of really why I think writing is quite ineffective in the real world today. So that's why sessions like these are really important. So the agenda for today, we looked at what's business writing and why you should care and things like that. Hopefully you're convinced by now. Now let's just get into the meat and potatoes of it, which is writing effectively. How do we do that? So this is sort of where we dive into the 5 pillars that I was referring to earlier. This is sort of like me breaking down what I've experienced into sort of 5 simple pillars so that you actually don't have to go and do the research yourself. It really boils down to 5 simple things: scope, content, structure, style, and tone. So when it comes to scope, you want to have a very specific scope. So let's just jump into that. Excuse me. Okay, so what does this mean? You want to focus on a specific topic or an issue, and you want to avoid mixing unrelated topics or general rambling. You may have seen this a lot where people write multiple lines of things, but they're combining different things that shouldn't really be in the same email, for example. And this often you can see this in like Slack channels a lot, where you post something and someone actually responds, and you've actually asked about like 3 to 4 different topics, and people respond to that specific post, but different people respond to different topics that you've actually tagged or asked or referenced. And that actually results in like this total meltdown just within a few minutes, and you just cannot keep up. So that's sort of like something that we definitely want to avoid. We want to tailor to a specific audience. You just don't want to do like some public service announcements or generally, addressed to no one or to whomsoever it may concern kind of stuff that doesn't belong in business communication. You want to also focus on a specific outcome. Um, maybe it's taking a decision, or maybe it's taking calling for a meeting, or helping with the next step, proposing what the next step is, asking for funding, some sort of like a larger goal. It doesn't have to be like a time bound goal that is immediate. It's great if it is, but it doesn't have to be. But there needs to be some sort of a specific outcome. And also you want to stick to the right altitude. So this is something a lot of people get wrong. Even experienced writers sometimes get wrong. Sticking to the right altitude is a skill. What do I mean by that? If you're writing to the CEO of a company and you're trying to explain about you know why you need an extension of the deadline or something like that, you want to give them like a high level overview. You don't want to actually bury them in the details. If you are writing to like a scrum master or someone like that, you want to actually focus on kind of like the granular level details of the engineering plan. But when it comes to finance or something else, you can it's okay to kind of stick to a very high altitude on that specific topic for engineering manager or scrum master or someone in that position. So kind of like picking the right altitude of information based on the outcome as well as based on the specific audience. That's an important skill that you need to have. So with that, let's sort of do a quick walkthrough. What we're going to do is we're going to evaluate a specific writing. The scenario is that there's a startup CEO and she is addressing her small team. This is what she says. I'll let you read it, and right after that, I want to ask you what you think is wrong. So if you want to, you're totally welcome to put your hand up and kind of like share your thoughts. Any volunteers?
Oh, we have Marcello is volunteering.
I believe that there's no connection between the issue of the latency spiking and the fact and the hiring process. So
Absolutely.
that's the lack of clarity that I see.
That's great. That's great. What else? What else do you see?
Joel?
I'm actually going to give you guys a little help. Let me actually bring these tips here that you saw on the previous slide, so you can just look at it. Thanks, Marcello, for that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
What else?
So
Marcello, you can continue going, or unless there's someone else.
Yeah, there's no clear target for the letter. It seems that it's targeting at least 3 different people. So Ken, Trisha, and whoever is the person that is getting this one.
Absolutely. So Joylon, do you want to
Yeah,
try?
there's multiple effectively requests here, but more importantly, there's a reference to one person to solve the problem, so it's no one else's problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really great.
And there's also in the chat from Ming, same, a mix of 2 topics. From Anna, there's no action explicitated. And Anna is saying there's we need to fix this very generic.
Yeah.
And Luigi is also saying multiple audience. It's not clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks guys. Those are really great points. So, I mean, remember what we talked about when it comes to like stream of consciousness. Some people actually do think this way and operate this way, where they believe that like written communication is just like whatever I think and speak, I just put it down in words. So, I have stream of consciousness flow, and I'm just going to put everything that to the keyboard. This is sort of like an example of that. So let's see how we can fix this. So based on all these feedback that you've given, this is definitely a no-go, right? So that's this is an attempt at trying to fix this. Let's inspect this and see if it addresses. I'll let you read and put your hand up if you want to speak to this. Anyone? How is this? You can talk about how it's better or how it's still not great.
You got them now, Sri.
Yeah. Okay. So this is.
So there's Joel.
Yeah, it's multiple atting, which is basically it's a to-do list that I have no control over.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like multiple things still combined in the same communication. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, it's not clear why both these topics are still, I mean, at least they made it clear that on a different note, just that phrase actually clarifies that this is separate, but it's still, it's questionable.
Yeah. And Anna is also adding, is this an email or a chat? It is still 2 topics that do not overlap.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's take one more iteration at trying to fix this. Okay, so here, I I'm going to make this potentially controversial statement that, if your app latency has shot up by 200%, that's building on fire. So that's what you need to be focused on. You should not be, first of all, you should not even be focused right now on things like, hiring pipeline, which are sort of like slightly longer lead time items. So in general, you want to cut through noise. You want to help your team cut through noise, especially as a CEO. I would actually, in this particular case, I would recommend that just focus on that. It solves two problems. One, it helps team focus on what's immediate and what's burning. Second, it addresses all the concerns that Joylon and Anna were raising, which is that it's still combining multiple threads. So, for example, the CEO can actually start a different email at a later time, or maybe at the same time, to the recruiting team specifically, saying that, like, hey, can I see the recruiting plan or something like that. And the other thing that's great about this is that it's asking for a specific action. Maybe point me to the fix plan or something like that. It doesn't presume that we need to fix this, as though others would not have actually thought about it. I mean, maybe others have actually thought about it. So it's sort of like also a little bit humble, I think. So that's what I think is good. The reason I'm actually trying to do this in bad, better, good kind of way is that business writing is a destination, is a journey. It's not a destination, and it's iterative in nature. So I want you guys to kind of like take that away from this, is that you need to kind of continue refining it. This is the green stuff may still not be great. It may still need to be refined further, but in general, writing is iterative. So just keep that in mind. So with that said, let's jump to the second pillar, which is actionable. Sorry, before I jump, do you have any questions?
Yeah, can we go back to the previous one? Yeah. I find whenever this happens, like, point me at the plan. It seems like sometimes it's a bit aggressive because the plan could be not there, and the CEO is actually assuming that like, seems like a bit passive aggressive, but that's the way I would perceive it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely, I think this could actually be made something more soft. For example, you could say something like, is there a plan for fixing this? If so, could you point me to it, or something like that?
Yep.
And Ming is saying in the chat, identify a specific owner to address the issue instead of a team of people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like, some of those could just vary based on the context and the situation. If it's a CEO, and if it's kind of like I don't know how big this, if this is a very small team, then I guess they could just point directly to the person. If it's a large enough team and maybe there's not enough visibility into who is working on that, I think as a CEO, it may be reasonable to just tag the engineering team, assuming the team is actually not like thousands of people. But yeah, there's quite a bit of context dependency, and kind of like just like knowing what works for that specific context. Cool. Let's move on to the next pillar, actionable content. So what do we mean by actionable content? You want to stay solution focused rather than problem focused. You want to be action oriented as opposed to knowledge oriented. Be grounded in facts and evidence rather than based on opinions and emotions. Provide enough background, and rather than assuming people have the audience that you're targeting actually have prior knowledge of everything that is needed to make a decision or drive a specific outcome. So let's again do like a quick evaluation. Here, there's a head of revenue and growth of some company writing to the head of engineering. This is what they're saying. I'll let you read. Put your hand up when you have something to share. Okay, here is a little hint from the previous slide. Okay, I think
it's definitely emotional.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite dramatic, isn't it?
Yeah. Assuming prior knowledge, because there's no proof that the customer will not come back, or
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's very opinion based, and it's kind of like doomsday, problems, right? Uh, Joylon.
It's effectively ramping up pressure, but actually with
Yeah.
also an insinuation of what the problem is, but not actually factual based.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
And Anna is adding, describing a doomed scenario.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Doomsday. Cool. So based on all that, this is going to be a fail in our evaluation. So here's a next iteration of this.
There should be separate issues. It should ignore customer experience and get back on revenue goals.
Yeah, possibly.
You know.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, like they may actually not even be related, right? Like,
yeah. It's one person's problem, but for an engineering problem, it's not obviously their problem at all, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is good about this, though, compared to the previous one?
Well, it's not like issue cascading soup of problems,
right.
and more.
right. At least it's solution focused, right? It doesn't say a specific action, but at least it's sort of focused on, well, if we fix it, then we can. It's sort of a more positive.
Yeah, and it's also actually saying that, okay, we have a problem that activations have dropped by a metric.
Yeah.
And we actually need to fix that, the authentication service. So it's better. It's pointing to actually what the problem is instead of problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Anna is adding looking into possible solution.
Yeah, that's good. Cool. So let's take another step to see if we can improve this even further. Okay.
And that's focused on the solution.
Yeah, it's focused on solution, which is great. Maybe the ASAP and caps may be a bit aggressive, but maybe that could be improved a bit further. But at least it's good that it's starting with the solution that we need to fix this 20% drop. And I think to your point, Jailon, this one actually has the revenue stuff decoupled, right? Because whether you're head of revenue or whether you're head of engineering or whatever, 20% drop in app activation is a big deal, right? So as any employee of the company, you should care about this. So it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm responsible for revenue, therefore I'm going to come from the revenue perspective kind of thing, right? So this particular iteration actually does a nice job of kind of splitting that out. We need to fix this. I understand, and it also is a bit humble. It actually says that if this is actually related to the authentication service, then could you report back with a plan for a fix? Okay, cool. So we would, Jalan, do you have something else to say? Your hand is still up.
Not really. I mean, apart from the fact that it's using the English could, which is like a weak action.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that culturally, if someone in English whose English says, could you possibly do this for me?
Yeah.
Lots of people think, I don't have to do that, whereas
absolutely.
I need you to do this. It's quite a different thing.
Yeah, but absolutely. I actually struggled that with a lot when I moved from America to here a couple of years back. I would often have colleagues say stuff like, perhaps you might think of trying this or something very soft. And then I would actually think they actually talked about something that's completely optional.
Or like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that.
Yeah, or that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still learning my UK English, so perhaps I would love to join a meetup if someone actually does an American to British translation in software. Cool. So the next pillar is coherent structure. This may be pretty obvious to some of you, but actually in practice, I personally find this quite hard myself. Let's go through this. Linear flow of ideas, A leads to B, B leads to C, C leads to D, is in general easier to consume And also trying to put stuff in a linear flow also helps refine your own thinking, in my experience at least. You definitely want to avoid circular references, sort of like spaghetti logic, where it's actually not clear what you're trying to say, jumping back and forth across different information hierarchies. You want to group similar ideas together, conflate dissimilar ideas, or conflation of like different levels of ideas. Try to avoid them as much as you can. You want to maintain kind of like the information hierarchy levels. Like, for example, animal to fruit is the same as cat to apple. If you kind of jumble them up, it may just not make sense. Some of this will, when we look at the example that's coming next, some of this will just become clearer. Uh, Eliminate logical flaws and decouple decisions. So it's actually incredibly easy to jump into to get into logical fallacies. There are several books. I have a few of them. There are several books that actually talk about logical fallacies that like the human mind in general is susceptible to. So just be aware of the fact that your what you write could actually reflect some logical fallacies, and correct them as you see them. Okay, let's evaluate again. Finance manager writing to head of facilities. Okay. Same thing. Read and put your hand up if you have something to say, or post on the chat. And here's the cheat sheet. Okay.
Well, like I said, there's no relation between acne and investing in video conferences. There seems to be no logic between the two.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually there is a bias. There is a cognitive bias called artificial dichotomy. That actually happens a lot in business contexts, where you often hear people saying stuff like, oh, either we do this for this print, or we invest in something else, as though those are the two options available. So that happens a lot. So great catch, Marcelo. What else?
Yeah. Also, I don't see the logic between being short on cash and Acne's good location. Yeah, they don't know if Acne is good location, but it's cheap. So it's a bit contradictory there.
Yeah, it's very convoluted. It is sort of like the spaghetti thing we talked about, right? What else? Does it drive any action?
No,
actually.
Give you an opinion at the end. I would rather.
Yeah, but I would rather. Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like it's not a very business action, right? Like it's more like my preference is this, as opposed to saying that, look, we should do this, and here is how, or here is why. Okay, cool. So based on all that, we're going to give this a red and a fail. So here's the next iteration. Same drill. It'd be great to see if some folks from Italy want to chime in.
I am from Italy, but I'm not.
But aren't you based in London, though?
Yeah, I'm in London.
Yeah.
So I'll shut up now.
No, that's not what I meant. Sorry.
No, I'm joking.
I guess the guys from Italy, they're wondering where Hackney is.
Oh yeah, Hackney is a location in London. Sorry about that.
It's a trendy location in East London.
Yeah.
The semicolons don't help when an unordered list or an unordered list would help.
Yeah, an ordered list would help. Yes. Yeah. But at least there is actually a concept of ordering stuff or grouping similar ideas together, isn't it? So, and at least, okay, so overall, the information hierarchy, you can actually see that there is some structure. He's actually saying, while the deals are attractive, positive, we need to consider three downsides, negative. So there's a pro and a con at a very high level. And within the cons, he's actually split into three things, like, we don't know when we'll return back. Hackney may not be suited to our needs, or we'll lock up cache. So at least like there's a 1, 2, and then within 2 there is 1, 2, 3. So that simple kind of structure is sort of obviously coming out. But like you said, yeah, it's sort of like a bit hard to read, and still there is some conflation, isn't it? Like I think like Marcelo mentioned before, it's not clear why Hackney's kind of clubbed into this decision. It's it's not like, what about office spaces in other locations, right? Or is Hackney the only area in London where office prices could be cheap right now? If so, that should be stated. If not, then that constraint should actually be removed from the argument altogether, right? So here's the third iteration. Let's see. Okay, so here you can see that the decision is scoped down. So first he's actually stating, let's focus on scoping down this decision to just this particular thing, that is evaluating the investment in office space right now. And he's actually clearly removed Hackney from the whole confusion. And then he's also said, how do we do that? How do we take that decision? So to decide this, we need to evaluate the benefit against the cost. Okay, well, how do you do that? Then he's also stating that assessment depends on 2 uncertain variables: length of work from home and price increases after COVID, which both are unknown. And following that, he's also saying he's recommending a plan of action. He's actually also taking ownership as part of that. He's saying that I will revert back tomorrow with a cost-benefit analysis modeling these variables. Cool.
Yep.
So sorry, Marcelo, you're saying something.
No, I was just thinking it's still quite wordy. There's a lot of information. So
it is wordy, yes, yeah. Absolutely. I think wording, you do want to be concise in general, but not at the cost of, like, for example, in this case, the second one is actually more concise, but it's actually quite unclear.
Yeah.
Because it's still logically, it's kind of like scoping in. Verbose stuff is not always bad. So it should be looked at as sort of what is the benefit of adding more words. So in this particular case, I would argue that adding more words actually drives some clarity. But to your point again, he can cut down the first sentence. He could just say that, I'll just do the benefit analysis. These are the 2 variables. I'll do the benefit. He could just say something like, let's remove Hackney from this decision. I'll do the benefit analysis. Get back to you.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's a good comment from Anna saying few new lines would make it more readable. So kind of break it down with the new line.
Yeah, absolutely. Readability and usability. Yeah, those are things we'll actually dive more into as part of the workshop. Again, these are just like cross-cutting broad principles. So we'll actually do a lot of work on kind of like usability of your reading, of your writing material, as well as part of the workshop. Good comment, Anna. Okay, next one is simplified style. So this is not like, the New Yorker or anything like that. Like, you want to keep like your language very simple. Active voice, I ate lunch versus lunch was eaten by me. So again, this could be like an American versus British. I actually see like a lot of passive voice usage in UK English. Again, adapted to whatever is acceptable, but in general, active voice is is shorter, as well as it doesn't bury the actor. You have to say who the actor is and what they do. It should be concise, like Marcelo said before. Should use simple, short sentences. It shouldn't be verbose. Avoid jargon unless you can actually explain. Use jargon only when it's absolutely needed. Maybe you're actually using the same term again in the later part of what you're writing, and you don't want to keep using the whole thing every time. So that's actually a good reason. Use common jargon or common acronyms like ETA, EOD, stuff like that may be fine. ASAP, like things like that may be fine, but like just avoid acronyms that just go beyond that and that are non-obvious, unless you can explain them. Excuse me. Easy to understand and non-obvious language. You want to avoid flowery words, being overly articulate, using vague phrases, vague idioms, really obscure references. Sports references sometimes actually falls flat, especially if you're working with an international audience and you're actually using a lot of sports idioms and sports metaphors. This happens a lot with my team here in London, where our American colleagues actually use a lot of baseball references, and some of them are actually not understandable to like European audience. So sort of keep things like that in mind. Same drill. We're going to evaluate an engineering manager communicating to agile coach. And here's your cheat sheet.
Yeah, I don't know what's a DQ and a CTO.
Yeah, DQ, CTO. It's kind of like acronym soup, right?
Yeah.
What else?
You're mixing epic in there, which is probably not what you mean. You mean an epic, talking to an agile coach.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah.
But on the fly fix or hot fix, these are standard definitions. I think that will be that should be fine.
That may be fine. Yes.
Yeah. Dump quib. Behooving the question. It's not friendly for non-natives, I would say.
Yeah, it's like he's writing for the New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
He or she. It could be a she too. So they're writing for the New Yorker.
Could be interesting what the Orange team is doing, which is what is the scope or the goal or the job of the Orange.
Good
team.
point. Good point. Yes. Cool. So let's take another iteration.
I mean, Liz is defined his acronym, which helps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a relief. And what else?
Passive use. I say it in the chat,
Yeah. Good one.
Can you repeat why passive use is not a good thing?
What's that?
Well, Shri, can you explain why the use of passive is not
Sure. Yeah. So passive in general, passive voice, you can actually state a sentence without actually saying who the actor is. Look at the example that we looked at before. Lunch was eaten by me. You can actually cut the by me, and that would still be a sentence. Lunch was eaten. You can just say lunch was eaten. That's still a full sentence. With active voice, you really cannot bury the actor. So you actually have to say who did what. So that's the main reason. And also passive voice, at least with English, it's longer.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, I use it sometimes when I say like the project might be delayed, so that it just
exactly.
It just happened. And,
yes, because the stars.
Yeah, because of the stars. The stars delayed them.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's take another iteration. How do you feel about this? This still doesn't address what Giovanni pointed out, which is actually doesn't capture what Orange Team's scope is. Maybe that is also something that you can footnote. The point I want to get across is you want to be as concise as you can, but use acronyms where they make sense and reference them. And you can see like a nice use of the footnoting technique, right? So if you have something that is detracting from the main argument that you're trying to make, just don't put that as part of it and kind of distract everyone's attention. You can footnote it. If they want to, find out what exactly constitutes degraded customer experience, they can actually read your footnote and understand it.
Yeah, I mean, the information can be in the footnote or in the text, as you were suggesting in the footnotes. But the good thing between yellow and green is that the information is there and it's completely missing from the yellow option.
Yeah, exactly. The yellow was kind of vague about, what the downside was, right? Cool. Great.
Shri, just to say that Anna was kind of answering to the previous question regarding why is passive bad, and she's saying it's kind of masking responsibility. It's kind of confusing, and it doesn't allow to take ownership.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, cool. The last pillar, and I would actually say that this is really the most important pillar, is having a professional tone. So even if you actually fail on the first 4 pillars, I think the building could potentially stand if you were actually good on the 5th one. Vice versa, if you're actually really strong on the 4 pillars, if your professional tone is bad, then the whole house could collapse. So just really keep that in mind. This is really the most important pillar, and that's why I reserved this for the last. So what does this mean? You want to be respectful, inclusive, empathetic. Absolutely, in a business setting, there's no room for abusive language, bullying, harassing, using phrases like "I told you so," stuff like that. You want to, use language that reinforces team spirit and openness, especially in software and technology that we're kind of working almost 12 hours a day sometimes. You really want to interact in a positive and pleasant way. Erecting walls and erecting ownership silos, though those are actually not really great and reflective of team spirit. You want to be genuine and sincere. Avoid things like "the best team ever!" exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Maybe sometimes maybe you just launched a great project, and you're just messaging that to the team, and you're kind of like experiencing a high. It's acceptable during that time. But if you actually post stuff like this every single day, they lose their value, and they come across as insincere. And most importantly, humble. Being humble, honest is very important. Avoiding superlatives, avoiding bombastic language. So those are sort of, there's many more to professional tone, but these are some top level things. We'll kind of dive into more of these as part of the workshop again, especially now there's a lot of new research on kind of what kind of language to use that might actually be considered like triggering and things like that. So we can actually go into some of those as well later. Evaluation, product director to a data science contractor. Who wants to go? Here's the cheat sheet.
The screaming right now is very offensive.
He's screaming and obviously very offensive, yes.
Yeah.
But it's genuine. It's real. Okay. Seems real.
Yeah.
It's aggressive, yes.
Yeah, also targeting one single person for responsibility, it's not constructive.
Yeah. And how do you feel about the language of my investors and my customer engagement?
It makes people out to be basically, this is my thing and it's your work to actually fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So he's almost saying that you are a contractor, just do your job, these are my customers. It's not very inclusive. And that's sort of the reason why I chose this example, because I think often we actually want to extend our courtesy and genuineness and humility even to people that are not directly working with us, even to contractors, consultants, people that are outside our company. Cool. So let's see how we can fix this.
I guess in this case, it's anything that we could write could be better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, how about this? What's good? What's bad? Still.
There's a we against you, which is still not inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I just forgot to mention this. In the previous one, in the red one, I want you guys to focus on the phrase "you people."
Oh, yeah.
So keep that in mind. There's a very specific reason I'd included that. That's a trigger word. For people whose first language is not English, please remember, don't use the word "you people" because that has a lot of really bad connotations, racial connotations, things like that. It reflects "you people" often refers to you as a race or something like that. So you as an ethnicity. So you want to definitely avoid stuff like that. So that's specific. There are many more phrases that are sort of trigger phrases. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into a lot of those, but just keep that in mind. Okay, so final stab at making this better. This looks much better, doesn't it? Anyone wants to share their thoughts on this?
Again, the use of could. It's a bit of a. It's a bit. Could you tell me what the weather is tomorrow? Yeah, I could.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, but at least it's more direct, and it's more sort of like he's not kind of compromising. He's saying that if this is sort of like unintentional, then we need to revert back, and I can help.
Yeah, but if you said like we need to walk through the team's thinking, it's probably better.
Yeah. The second one was actually also a bit passive aggressive, right? I'm sure you had good reasons, but can you clarify, right? So it's kind of like a fake politeness.
Yeah, usually translates to I'm sure you didn't have good reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So definitely avoid stuff like that. Cool. So with that said, now let's jump into a group exercise where you're actually going to fix yourself from scratch. Manu's going to put you in breakout rooms. So
shall we go with the other scenario?
That might actually take a bit longer, and we don't have that much time. We have another exercise, so maybe.
Okay, cool. Let's go with this one.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. Use the second one because I'm not sure I copied that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
No worries. Okay, so look at this. There's going to be, excuse me. You need to work together in your group or breakout room and fix this together.
Yeah.
So we'll give you guys how much? 5 minutes?
Okay, cool. So we have everyone back.
Okay. So, do you want to say something? I mean, group one.
No, yeah, I am. I was selected by my mate to be the representative of the group number one.
Yeah, good.
And we hadn't so much time to rewrite from scratch the letter, but we identify some points to improve. For example, there is the first part of the letter. There are a lot of things to details about what they did, what they say, who call someone else. So maybe a little bit.
Who fell sick?
Sorry.
Who fell sick?
Yes. I found also a place when, for example, someone asked for if it was possible to move on the delay. So this is not a solution. This is just a patch or try to gain some time. And so in that case, there is not a proposal for a solution. Also, there is an acronym CRP. I don't know what CRP is. And the last part, I will also send you that other document. It seems that I want to give you the burden of finding a solution. So
yeah.
It's not proposing. It's just to pass the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe could be different. So what if we find a moment to discuss together this topic or and so on? And,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool.
We did well.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Great. Giovanni's team, amazing.
Giovanni's team, we are fantastic. Yeah.
Who's next?
Team 2. You can blame the old man.
Okay. Development progress is looking good, but we are seeing some delays caused by configuration issues on pre-prod. Working on it. On a separate note, CRP ready for deployment. Kind reminder. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. ASAP as soon as possible. Yeah.
Ask Google what this was ESP.
Yes. Yeah, so the CRP is the change request process. Is usually a ticket that you open to say, these are the changes that I need to do that I need to go live or to go to an environment.
Yeah, and here I think this is a really good moment to talk about TLDR. So TLDR is a good technique that you can use where you can just say TLDR, this is in progress. This is the blah, blah, like the top 2 things that you actually definitely want to get through. And then you can have like the main body that actually describes. We'll do more of these later, but definitely remember, for those of you that don't know, TLDR is too long, didn't read. It's a good tool for kind of really capturing like a quick summary and then putting it up front. Cool. Team.
Anna's saying it felt like he was jumping all over the place, mixing delays with people on vacation, with prepared environments and stuff.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, that's the reason why we kind of chose this as sort of example, and also we gave a very short amount of time because all these principles that you looked at today may be obvious to you. I mean, you probably maybe none of it was actually new information, but when you're actually in a time crunch, it's really hard to kind of like really focus and zoom in. That's the reason why it's all about practicing and iterating. So anyway, that's part of the deal. Next team.
Group 3. This is like this. They've taken a laser and cut everything. What happened here?
I was just writing. I'm like, it's like logorrhea at the start. I'm like, I can't read this. I need to focus on what's important.
Yeah.
And I need to bullet point it out. And it's like literally, the opening sentence is, we need to delay. I'm giving you confidence, but we need to delay.
Yeah.
And also we, not you or they or someone else, we're part of it together. And then the reasoning is this and this, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm gonna ignore your meaning of ASAP at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, search it on Google, right?
Yeah. Cool. We have one more team.
Yeah, before we go to the next team, Shrikant, I have to tell you that after 15 years spent in industry and consulting and never thought to Google or ask what TLDR means, I've always seen it and just ignored it. It's the first time in 15 years I hear what it means. Thanks, guys. I've never even wanted to Google it.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you kind of enter it's like, oh, now everyone uses it. Now it's too embarrassing for me to ask anyone. So I'm just going to pretend like I know this, right? Yeah, I've definitely been there. Cool. So I guess that's it, right? Just the 3 teams?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So unfortunately, we don't have time to do the other exercise we had also planned. We actually had come up with a scenario and done an exercise on how to write from scratch. It was going to be like a group exercise again, but what we'll do is we'll actually post this in the Meetup room and the LinkedIn room as well. So you can actually do this on your own. I definitely recommend that you use these principles and try to write from scratch. I don't know if you can see my screen anymore. Can you?
No, we can see you.
No. And it's also while you share the screen, Shri, it's also on Miro. So this Miro board is going to be left for you available. So like, I don't know, if over the weekend you feel like, let me just write from scratch on this example, you can enjoy that.
Yeah. So this is the scenario. So it's described here, and it's also on the Miro board. I would definitely encourage you to kind of take a crack at it. And if you want any feedback, definitely happy to provide any feedback. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on all the platforms. Cool. So that's it. So just to summarize, we looked at these 5 principles or 5 pillars to be specific on your scope, being more actionable with your content, have a coherent structure, have a very simplified style that can be easily consumed, and at all costs, just don't jump into unprofessional tone. Just always maintain a professional decorum. And with that, we'll end the session. And if there are any questions or any comments?
Yeah, I mean, a million. But would you apply the same principles to technical writing? When you have to share, user stories or product description, or is it even more strict than the set of rules you would apply there?
I think it's the same set of rules, except the way in which you actually apply them is slightly different. And the main reason is the context is different. you're actually writing to a technical audience. You're right, or you're writing to, maybe if you're writing user stories, as an example, you're writing to like a team of engineers or a Scrum team that's actually taking the user story and like building it, for example. So the audience changes. So you actually need to really contextualize what you're writing. You need to think, it's actually the same principles, because you need to think of the right level of altitude for them. You need to actually contextualize to what they're looking for. What is the outcome that you want? Like in the case of user stories, what is the action? You actually want them to really get a clear understanding of what they're building. What is the scoping of the story? What are the dependencies? So those are like the obvious the shared outcomes, at least when you're writing user stories, keeping that in mind, what do you want to write? So in general, I would say the answer to your question is yes, it's the same principles, but it's just contextualized differently.
Cool. Thank you.